6 months had passed since the Battle of Velros, and the galaxy barely resembled the place it had been before. Old alliances had shifted, ancient rivalries had cooled. Border disputes that had simmered for decades suddenly found peaceful solutions. The reason was simple. Nobody wanted to be the next species to face the eternal silence in battle. Captain Han Doyen walked through the corridors of his ship, reviewing reports from across known space. The eternal silence had become something he never expected or wanted, a symbol. Children from a dozen species drew pictures of it. Politicians referenced it in speeches. Philosophers wrote treatises about what humanity's display of power and mercy meant for galactic civilization. He found Lieutenant Park Mirai in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. She had requested this meeting, which was unusual. Park Mirai was typically all business, focused entirely on her duties as tactical officer. "You wanted to see me, Lieutenant?" She turned from the window and he could see exhaustion in her eyes. "Captain, I've been thinking about the battle. I can still see every ship we destroyed. My neural interface recorded everything, and I can't forget a single detail. Thousands of people died because I pulled the trigger." Han Doyen sat down beside her, understanding immediately what she was feeling. "You followed orders. You did your duty. Those deaths are not your responsibility alone. But I could have hesitated. I could have questioned the orders. Instead, I executed them perfectly, efficiently, without a moment's doubt." She looked at her hands as if seeing weapons instead of fingers. "What does that make me?" "It makes you human," he replied quietly. "And humans feel guilt even when they do the right thing. Especially when they do the right thing. The fact that you're questioning your actions means you haven't lost your humanity. Hold on to that feeling, Mirai. The day you stop caring about the people who die is the day you become the monster you're afraid of being." Chief Engineer Yoon Hyejin had a different problem. She sat in her engineering bay, surrounded by requests from other species asking about human technology. Everyone wanted to know how the Eternal Silence's weapons worked. They wanted to buy them, trade for them, steal them if possible. Dr. Choi Minho found her there, looking frustrated as she deleted yet another request. "Still getting messages from hopeful buyers?" "Dozens every day," she confirmed. "The Crithians want our gravitational shear weapons. The Stellarium Empire is offering half their treasury for the dimensional shield technology. Even species we've never met are asking if we'll sell them quantum torpedoes. And our answer remains the same: of course. These weapons were built to defend humanity, not to be sold to the highest bidder. Can you imagine what the galaxy would look like if everyone had access to this technology? The 4-minute war would look like a minor skirmish compared to the conflicts that would follow." Minho nodded in agreement. "The Galactic Council has been discussing regulations on advanced weapons development. They want to establish treaties limiting what kinds of technologies are acceptable for military use." Yoon Hyejin laughed bitterly. 20 years ago, those same council members were developing the worst weapons they could imagine. Now that humans have shown them something truly frightening, suddenly they want regulations. Where was this concern before? "It's human nature," Minho replied, then corrected himself with a slight smile. "Or perhaps I should say it's universal nature. People only want rules after they've been hurt. At least they're learning. That's progress." Far across the galaxy in the rebuilt headquarters of the Crithian Armada, Warlord Thexel faced his own struggles. He had returned home to find his people divided. Some saw him as a failure who had led their fleet to destruction. Others viewed him as the warrior who had survived an impossible battle and learned valuable lessons. He stood before the Crithian High Command, delivering his final report on the Velros incident. The council chamber was packed with military leaders, all waiting to hear what he would say about humanity. "We were wrong," Thexel began simply. "For centuries, we believed that military might was measured in numbers. The size of fleets, the quantity of weapons, the ability to project force across vast distances. We thought we understood power." He activated a holographic display showing the eternal silence. "This single ship taught us that we understood nothing. Humanity possesses technology we can barely comprehend, yet they chose not to use it for conquest. They could have destroyed us completely. Instead, they saved our wounded and offered us peace." One of the council members interrupted. "Are you suggesting we should fear humans?" "No," Thexel replied firmly. "I'm suggesting we should respect them, and more importantly, we should learn from them. They showed us that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose when and how to use force. The debate continued for hours, but eventually the Krithian High Command reached a conclusion. They would honor the peace treaty with humanity. More than that, they would restructure their entire military philosophy, moving away from conquest and toward defense. It wasn't a change that would happen overnight, but it was a start. In the Stellarium Empire, High Chancellor Vexmora faced similar questions from her people. The Crystal Eternity had survived the battle, but barely. Her war fleet had been reduced to a fraction of its former strength. Yet she found herself strangely grateful for the defeat. She addressed the Stellarium Parliament, her crystalline form reflecting light and patterns that conveyed deep emotion. We grew arrogant. We believed our advanced technology made us superior to all other species. The humans proved us wrong in 4 minutes. But they also showed us something we had forgotten, that power without wisdom is merely destruction. The Parliament voted to establish a new institution, the Academy of Peaceful Sciences. It would focus on using advanced technology for healing, exploration, and mutual benefit rather than warfare. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The species that had built planet-killer weapons was now turning its attention to saving planets instead. Ambassador Namsola spent her days in endless diplomatic meetings, crafting the new framework for galactic relations. She met with representatives from species that had never spoken to humans before, all of them curious about this unusual civilization. One meeting stood out. A delegate from a small, peaceful species called the Tyranni approached her nervously. Their civilization had been bullied by larger powers for generations, forced to pay tribute and surrender territory whenever threatened. Ambassador Nam, the Tyranni delegate said quietly, "My people have heard what happened at Velros. We heard that humanity fights for the right to be left alone, that you defend yourselves but don't seek to conquer others. Is this true?" "It's true," Namsola confirmed. "We want peace, but we've learned that sometimes peace must be defended." The Tyranni delegate's next words changed everything. Would humanity extend that defense to other species? Not as an empire controlling subjects, but as a protector, helping those who cannot protect themselves. Namsola thought carefully before answering. This was the question that would define humanity's role in the galaxy. Would they become the police force, using their power to impose order, or would they find a different path? "The Tyranni people have been peaceful for thousands of years," she finally said. "You've never attacked anyone, never threatened conquest, never done anything except try to survive. Yes, humanity would defend species like yours, not because we want control, but because we remember what it's like to be vulnerable." Within weeks, a new alliance formed. The Peaceful Species Coalition brought together dozens of civilizations that had been victims of the galaxy's aggressive powers. Humanity didn't lead this coalition, but they guaranteed its security. The message was clear. Attacking peaceful species would now bring human intervention. The aggressive powers didn't like this new arrangement, but none of them wanted to test whether humanity had more ships like the Eternal Silence. Rumors suggested that there were 12 identical vessels, though nobody could confirm this. The uncertainty itself became a deterrent. Ensign Lee Daeho, now promoted to lieutenant, found his role changing in unexpected ways. He had become humanity's unofficial ambassador to young people across the galaxy. Schools requested virtual visits where he could talk about his experiences. Children sent him drawings and messages. One message particularly moved him. It came from a young Krithian whose father had died in the Battle of Velros. The child wrote, "I was taught to hate humans for killing my father. But then I learned that human doctors tried to save him, that they worked for hours trying to keep him alive even though his ship had attacked them. I don't understand this. Why would they try to save someone who was their enemy?" Lee Daeho spent a long time crafting his response. Finally, he wrote, "Your father was fighting for what he believed was right, just as we were. When people fight, they become enemies. But when the fighting stops, they can become something else. Human doctors tried to save your father because they saw him as a person who needed help, not as an enemy who deserved to die. I hope you can remember your father with pride. And I hope you grow up in a galaxy where fewer children lose their parents to war." Admiral Kang Jiwoo coordinated all of this change from her office on Earth. She received daily reports from across human space and beyond. The Velros sector was now a graveyard. Debris from destroyed ships drifted through space like leaves in a gentle breeze. Some pieces were as large as buildings, others as small as dust particles. Emergency beacons flashed from damaged vessels, calling for help that their own fleets could no longer provide. Captain Han Doyun stood on the bridge of the eternal silence, looking at this devastation with heavy eyes. He had known this day might come, but knowing and experiencing were very different things. Thousands were dead, killed by weapons his ship had fired. Yes, they had attacked first. Yes, humanity had given them every chance to leave peacefully, but that didn't make the weight any lighter. Status of the surrendered vessels? He asked Lieutenant Park Mirai. She checked her displays, her neural interface processing data from all the disabled ships. 130 ships have completely powered down their weapons. They're broadcasting distress calls. Life support is failing on 47 vessels. Hull breaches detected on another 62. Captain, they have wounded crew members who need immediate medical attention. Han Doyen made his decision instantly. Signal Fleet Command. We need medical ships and rescue teams immediately. And contact Captain An Seojin. His evacuation transport has medical facilities. Tell him we need his help. Ensign Lee Daeho sent the messages, then looked at his captain with confusion. Sir, we're going to help them? After they tried to kill us? We're going to help them because they're injured and helpless, Han Doyen replied firmly. What they did was wrong. What we did was necessary. But we're not going to let people die when we have the power to save them. That's what makes us different from them. Within 2 hours, human rescue ships began arriving in the Velros sector. Captain An Seojin's transport was the first to reach the battlefield, and his crew immediately began organizing medical teams. They moved from ship to ship, cutting through damaged hulls to reach survivors, providing emergency medical care to the wounded. On the Crithian flagship Crimson Dawn, Warlord Thexel sat in his damaged command chair, watching human rescue workers board his ship. His pride wanted him to refuse their help, to die rather than accept mercy from the species he had dismissed as weak. But he was responsible for his surviving crew, and they needed medical attention. A human doctor approached him, carrying medical equipment. The doctor was small compared to Thexel's massive frame, but showed no fear. I'm Dr. Kim Yuna from the Transport Mercy's Light. Your ship's medical bay is destroyed. We need to evacuate your wounded to our facilities. Thexel looked at this tiny human who spoke with such confidence. Why are you helping us? We attacked you. We laughed at your warnings. By every law of warfare, you have the right to leave us to die. Dr. Kim Yuna began scanning him with her medical device, checking for injuries even as she answered his question. Because our laws of warfare are different from yours. We fight when we must, but we don't abandon the helpless. Now hold still. You have internal injuries that need treatment. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human medical teams worked tirelessly, treating alien wounded without discrimination. They saved Crithians who had fired the first shots. They rescued Stellarium crew members who had called humans primitive. They pulled Nexian survivors from destroyed ships, giving them water and medical care even though the Nexians had laughed at human warnings. The galaxy watched through long-range sensors and communication relays, and they didn't understand. Victory was supposed to mean domination. Defeated enemies were supposed to be destroyed or enslaved, not rescued and treated with care. What kind of species built weapons powerful enough to destroy fleets, then use those same resources to save their enemies? Admiral Kang Jiwoo arrived in the sector 3 days after the battle. She came aboard a diplomatic vessel, accompanied by Ambassador Nam Sola and a delegation of human officials. They established a temporary headquarters on a neutral station that had survived the fighting. The first meeting was with the surviving enemy commanders. Warlord Thexel came, his injuries treated by human doctors. High Chancellor Vexmora attended remotely, her holographic form shimmering in the conference room. A Nexian representative also joined, speaking through a translation device. Admiral Kang Jiwoo sat at the head of the table, her uniform crisp despite days of non-stop work. She looked at each of the alien commanders in turn, her expression serious but not angry. You attacked neutral stations. You threatened civilian populations. You dismissed every attempt at peaceful resolution. The Battle of Velros was the direct result of your actions. She paused to let this sink in. But humanity is not interested in revenge or conquest. We want what we've always wanted, to live in peace and be left alone. Warlord Thexel spoke first, his voice carrying shame he had never felt before. Your ship, the Eternal Silence, destroyed my fleet in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. We threw everything we had at you and achieved nothing. Yet now you save our wounded and offer us terms instead of death. I don't understand your species. Ambassador Nam Sola leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Then let me explain. Humanity's first contact with alien life was devastating. We lost an entire colony ship to an unprovoked attack. That taught us that the galaxy could be cruel and hostile. So we prepared. We built weapons, developed technologies, and trained our people for the possibility of war. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the debris field that had once been 3 mighty fleets. But we also remembered what it felt like to be helpless. We remembered the fear and the loss, and we decided that if we ever gained power, we would use it differently. We would be strong enough to protect ourselves, but compassionate enough to show mercy. High Chancellor Vexmora's holographic form shifted colors, a sign of deep thought in her species. You could have destroyed us completely. Why didn't you? Because destruction wasn't our goal, Kang Jiwoo answered. Our goal was to stop the fighting and protect our people. That's been accomplished. Now we need to ensure it doesn't happen again. Over the next week, the terms of peace were negotiated. Humanity's demands were surprisingly simple. All 3 alien powers would withdraw their fleets from human space and the surrounding sectors. They would pay reparations to the families of those killed on the neutral station, and they would agree to mutual defense pacts that guaranteed respect for each other's territories. In exchange, humanity would share some of its medical technology, help rebuild the damaged fleets to defensive strength, and establish trade agreements that would benefit all parties. They would not demand territory, tribute, or subjugation. They simply wanted to ensure this kind of conflict never happened again. The alien commanders struggled to understand this approach. Power was meant to be used for expansion and domination. That's how the galaxy had always worked. Species fought, winners took what they wanted from the losers, and the cycle continued. Humanity was offering to break that cycle, but the concept was almost incomprehensible. During a private conversation, Warlord Thexel met with Lieutenant Park Mirai aboard the Eternal Silence. He had requested the meeting, though he wasn't entirely sure why. The human officer greeted him in one of the ship's conference rooms, offering him a seat designed for his larger frame. I watched the battle recordings, he told her. Your ship tracked every one of our vessels simultaneously. You predicted our movements before we made them. Your weapons operated on principles we don't even have theories about. How long have humans possessed this technology? Park Mirai considered how much to reveal. We've been developing it for 200 years, ever since we learned that the galaxy wasn't as peaceful as we hoped. 200 years, Thexel repeated slowly. All that time you pretended to be weak. You hid your true capabilities while we threatened and insulted you. Why? Because appearing strong too early would have made us a target, she explained. Every powerful species in the galaxy would have seen us as a threat and moved to destroy us before we were ready. We needed time to prepare, so we played the role of the minor power. It wasn't pleasant, but it kept our people safe. Thexel was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been haunting him since the battle ended. Why did you save us? After everything we did, after we attacked you and laughed at your warnings, why send medical ships? Why treat our wounded? Why offer us peace instead of annihilation? Park Mirai met his eyes steadily. Because we remember what it's like to be helpless. We remember the fear and the desperation. When we gained power, we had a choice. Become like those who hurt us or be something better. We chose to be better. News of the battle spread across the galaxy with incredible speed. Every species heard about the unknown human warship that had defeated 3 major fleets in 4 minutes. But more importantly, they heard about what came after. They heard about human rescue ships saving enemy survivors. They heard about peace terms that didn't demand subjugation. They heard about a powerful species that chose mercy over revenge. It changed everything. Species that had dismissed humanity as insignificant suddenly requested diplomatic meetings. Trade offers flooded into human space. Some civilizations asked for mutual defense pacts, hoping to gain humanity's protection. Others simply wanted to study and understand this species that operated by such different rules. The first minute of the battle changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. The Eternal Silence fired its gravitational shear weapons, technology that manipulated space-time itself in ways no other species had achieved. Invisible waves of gravitational force rippled through space, reaching the 50 Crithian warships that had dared to attack first. What happened next would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. The gravity around each ship suddenly intensified by factors of thousands. Metal hulls designed to withstand the vacuum of space began to crumple like paper. The ships didn't explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they collapsed inward, crushed by artificial gravity wells that compressed matter to impossible densities. In seconds, 50 warships became 50 spheres of compacted metal and organic material, each one about the size of a small car. They drifted silently in space, tombs for the thousands of crew members who hadn't even had time to scream. On the Crimson Dawn, Warlord Thexel watched his tactical display in absolute horror. 50 ships gone in an instant, destroyed by a weapon he didn't understand and couldn't defend against. His forearms shook with a mixture of rage and fear. All ships, focus fire on that human vessel. Destroy it now! 200 Crithian warships turned toward the eternal silence and unleashed every weapon they had. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, particle beams, everything in their arsenal fired simultaneously. The amount of energy released was enough to vaporize a planet. The weapons hit the human ship's dimensional shields and simply ceased to exist, passing into a different phase of reality, where they could cause no harm. The eternal silence moved through the storm of fire without slowing, without taking any damage whatsoever. High Chancellor Vexmora watched from her flagship with growing alarm. She had dismissed humanity as insignificant, but this ship demonstrated technology far beyond anything her empire possessed. She immediately sent new orders to her fleet. All Stellarium vessels join the attack. Target that human ship with everything we have, and send a priority message to the homeworld. Tell them we need reinforcements immediately. The Stellarium war fleet added their firepower to the assault. 250 ships armed with energy weapons that could burn through the atmospheres of planets opened fire. Crystal-based beam weapons, more precise than anything the Crithians used, lanced toward the eternal silence. Captain Han Doyun watched the tactical display calmly as hundreds of ships tried desperately to hurt his vessel. Lieutenant Park Mirai tracked every enemy ship through her neural interface, her mind processing information at speeds that would be impossible for an unenhanced human. Energy expenditure at only 15% capacity, she reported. Shields holding at maximum strength. Enemy weapons are completely ineffective, Captain. Then let's show them what effective weapons look like, Han Doyun replied. Deploy quantum torpedoes. Full spread. Chief Engineer Yoon Hee-jin activated the torpedo launch systems. Unlike conventional missiles, quantum torpedoes didn't just explode. They created cascading reactions in the quantum field that held reality together, causing chain reactions that spread through nearby matter like ripples on a pond. 20 torpedoes launched from the eternal silence, each one seeking a different target among the enemy formations. They moved at near light speed, impossible to intercept or avoid. When the first torpedo hit a Stellarium warship, the effect was devastating. The ship didn't just explode. It came apart at the molecular level, its structure breaking down as the quantum cascade ripped through it. The effect spread to the ships nearby, each one experiencing the same catastrophic failure. Within seconds, one torpedo had destroyed 6 ships. 20 torpedoes meant 120 ships destroyed in the span of 30 seconds. The second minute of battle saw the 3 alien fleets beginning to panic. They had never faced an enemy they couldn't even hurt, much less one that could destroy their vessels with such ease. More than that, they realized this single human ship wasn't even trying hard. It was demonstrating its capabilities methodically, almost casually. Dr. Choi Min-ho monitored the enemy communication networks from his station on the eternal silence. His quantum computer processed millions of transmissions simultaneously, translating and analyzing them for useful tactical information. Captain, the enemy fleets are attempting to coordinate their attacks. They're starting to work together for the first time. Good, Han Doyun said. Let them coordinate. It won't help. The 3 fleets formed a unified attack formation, something that would have been unthinkable an hour earlier. 800 ships organized into strike groups, each one approaching from a different angle. They planned to overwhelm the human ship through sheer numbers, attacking from every direction simultaneously. Ensign Lee Daeho watched his communication displays light up with enemy chatter. Despite his fear, he found himself almost feeling sorry for them. They had no idea what they were facing. Captain, all 3 fleets are converging on our position. They're attempting an envelopment maneuver. Let them come close, Han Doyun replied. Yoon Hee-jin, prepare the null field generator. Yoon Hee-jin's hands moved across her controls, activating the most powerful weapon system on the eternal silence. The null field generator was technology that humanity had developed after decades of research into absolute zero physics. It could create a sphere of space where all energy stopped moving, where matter froze at the molecular level. The enemy fleets closed in, forming a sphere around the eternal silence with the human ship at the center. It was a classic tactical formation, designed to ensure the target couldn't escape and had to face attacks from every direction. Warlord Thexel personally led his remaining ships into position, determined to destroy this human vessel even if it cost him his entire fleet. "Fire all weapons," he commanded. "Don't give them a moment to respond." 800 ships fired at once. The space around the eternal silence became a solid wall of energy and explosives. No ship should have been able to survive such an attack. No shield should have been able to withstand that much concentrated firepower. The weapons hit the dimensional shields and vanished, just as before. The eternal silence sat calmly at the center of the firestorm, completely untouched. Then it was humanity's turn. The null field generator activated, and a sphere of absolute zero energy expanded outward from the eternal silence at the speed of light. There was no warning, no chance to escape. One moment the alien ships were firing their weapons. The next moment they were frozen. The effect was terrifyingly beautiful. Ships simply stopped. Their engines died instantly. Their life support systems ceased functioning. Every molecule in every ship dropped to absolute zero temperature, a state of matter where nothing could move, nothing could function.
Nothing could survive. The crews died without pain.
Their bodies frozen so quickly that their neural systems couldn't even register what was happening. 300 ships became floating sculptures of ice and metal, perfectly preserved monuments to the folly of underestimating humanity. The third minute of battle saw the remaining alien forces breaking apart in terror. Half of their combined fleet was now destroyed or disabled. They had thrown everything they had at one human ship and achieved exactly nothing. Every weapon they possessed was useless. Every tactic they tried failed completely. High Chancellor Vex Mora stared at her tactical displays with crystalline eyes that couldn't believe what they were seeing. Her mighty war fleet, the pride of the Stellarium Empire, was being destroyed by a single enemy vessel. She had two choices: continue fighting and lose everything, or retreat and face the shame of defeat. She chose survival. All Stellarium ships withdraw immediately. Maximum quantum speed. Abandon this sector. Her fleet began turning away, charging their faster-than-light drives to escape. Other ships from the Crithian and Nexian fleets saw the Stellarium forces fleeing and decided to follow. Panic spread through the remaining vessels. Commanders abandoned their posts. Whole squadrons broke formation and tried to reach the nearest jump points. Captain Han Doyen watched the enemy fleet beginning to scatter. He felt no joy in this, no satisfaction. This wasn't a victory to celebrate. It was a lesson that needed to be taught, but he took no pleasure in the teaching. "They're running," Lieutenant Park Mire observed. "Should we let them go?" Han Doyen thought about this carefully. If he let them escape, they might regroup and attack again. But if he destroyed them all, humanity would be seen as ruthless killers. There had to be a middle path, one that would make the lesson clear without turning humans into monsters. "Open a channel to all remaining enemy forces," he ordered. Ensign Lee Daeho established the connection, his hand steady now despite the carnage displayed on every screen. Han Doyen's voice broadcast to every surviving ship, calm and clear. "You came to this sector to take what didn't belong to you. You attacked neutral stations and killed innocent people. You dismissed humanity as weak and threatened our colonies. Now you've learned the truth. We are not weak. We never were. But understand this, we take no pleasure in destruction. Surrender now and you will be treated with mercy. Continue fleeing and you will not reach your jump points alive. The choice is yours." On the Crimson Dawn, Warlord Thexel heard these words and felt something he had never experienced before in battle. The Velros sector had become a nightmare of flashing lights and weapons fire. 3 massive fleets circled each other like predators, their ships arranged in battle formations that stretched across millions of kilometers. Occasionally, someone would fire a warning shot, and the space between the fleets would light up with explosions and shields flaring. Warlord Thexel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Dawn, watching his tactical displays with satisfaction. His 300 warships represented the finest military force his species had ever assembled. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a continent. Around him, his officers worked efficiently, monitoring the enemy fleets and preparing for the coming battle. Status report, he commanded. The Stellarium fleet maintains position at Grid 7-4. The Nexian battle group has spread across Grid 8-2. Both are awaiting our first move. His tactical officer paused. Sir, we're also detecting civilian vessels fleeing the area. Human colony ships and evacuation transports. Thexel made a dismissive gesture with one of his arms. Ignore them. They're not worth the ammunition. Once we've dealt with the real threats, we'll decide what to do about human space. High Chancellor Vex Mora observed the same battlefield from her flagship, the Crystal Eternity. Her crystalline fingers traced patterns in the air as she communicated with her fleet commanders. The Stellarium war fleet had positioned themselves strategically, their planet-killer ships held in reserve for maximum psychological impact. The Crithians are posturing, she told her staff. They always make the first aggressive move. Be ready to respond with overwhelming force the moment they fire. A junior officer approached hesitantly. Chancellor, should we assist the human evacuation ships? Several are under harassment from Crithian patrol vessels. Vexmora considered this briefly. No. If humans are too weak to defend their own people, that is not our concern. We have larger matters to address. The Nexian battle group spread across space like a net, their ships communicating through quantum entanglement that made their coordination almost instantaneous. Their commander had no interest in the political disputes of the other powers. The Nexians simply wanted the resource-rich planets in the sector, and they would take them from whoever proved weakest. In the middle of the standoff, human evacuation ships moved as quickly as they could, desperate to get civilians to safety before the shooting started in earnest. Captain Ansiogen commanded one of the largest transports, his ship packed with refugees from 3 different colonies. He watched enemy warships pass within weapons range, knowing that any one of them could destroy his vessel in seconds. How much longer until we reach the jump point? He asked his navigator. 12 minutes at current speed, sir. But if we increase velocity, the Crithians might see it as a threat. An Seojun gripped his chair tightly. 12 minutes felt like an eternity when you were surrounded by warships looking for any excuse to open fire. He kept his ship on course, moving slowly and steadily, trying not to attract attention. Then something changed. Every tactical display in the sector suddenly showed a new contact. Something massive had just dropped out of quantum space at the edge of the battlefield, appearing without warning or any of the normal energy signatures that accompanied FTL travel. On the Crimson Dawn, alarms began sounding. Thexel's tactical officer stared at his displays in confusion. Sir, we have a new contact. Single ship bearing 270. Distance 50,000 kilometers and closing. What fleet does it belong to? Unknown, sir. The signature doesn't match anything in our database. The officer zoomed in the visual feed, and everyone on the bridge fell silent. The ship was enormous, easily twice the size of the largest Crithian battleship. Its hull was smooth and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. There were no visible weapons ports, no obvious engines, no markings of any kind. It moved through space with a grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. Identification? Thexel demanded. His communications officer worked frantically at his station. Sir, the ship is broadcasting on all frequencies. Single word identifier, eternal silence. Registry shows human origin. The bridge erupted in laughter. Even Thexel couldn't help but join in. A human warship? The species that barely had any military presence was sending a single vessel to challenge 3 entire fleets? It was absurd. This must be some kind of mistake, Thexel said, still chuckling. Perhaps they don't realize what they've stumbled into. Send them a message. Tell them to leave immediately before they get caught in the crossfire. Aboard the Eternal Silence, Captain Han Do-yoon sat in his command chair, perfectly calm as Lieutenant Park Mirai counted down the distance to the battlefield. His crew worked with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their assigned tasks. Dr. Choi Minho monitored 842 separate targets, his enhanced neural interface allowing him to track every enemy ship simultaneously. All enemy vessels accounted for, weapon signatures analyzed, tactical patterns mapped. Chief Engineer Yoon Hye-jin checked her systems one final time. Gravitational shear weapons at 100%. Null field generator ready. Quantum torpedoes loaded. Dimensional shields online. All systems functioning perfectly, Captain. Ensign Lee Daeho's hand still shook slightly as he opened communication channels to the enemy fleets. Sir, receiving multiple hails. The Crithians are ordering us to leave. The Stellarium fleet is demanding our identification. The Nexians are... They're laughing at us, sir. Han Doyun allowed himself a small smile. Let them laugh. Open a channel to all three fleets. Maximum broadcast strength. The channel opened and Han Doyun's voice echoed through every ship in the sector. His tone was calm and professional, without any hint of threat or anger. This is Captain Han Doyun of the human warship Eternal Silence. You are hereby ordered to withdraw all military forces from the Velros sector immediately. You have attacked neutral stations, threatened civilian populations, and violated numerous treaties. This is your only warning. Leave now or face the consequences. The response was immediate and predictable. Warlord Thexel's laughter boomed through the communication channel. The humans send one ship and make demands? This is the most entertaining thing I've seen in years. Tell me, little human, do you actually believe you can threaten the combined might of 3 galactic powers? High Chancellor Vexamora's voice joined in, cold and dismissive. Humanity should have stayed in their own space. Your arrogance will cost you dearly. We'll destroy your ship as an example to other minor species who forget their place. Han Doyun listened to their responses without expression. He had expected nothing different. The galaxy had spent 2 centuries underestimating humanity, and changing that perception would require a demonstration they could never forget. Lieutenant Park, he said quietly, are all civilian ships clear of the combat zone? Park Mirai checked her displays. The last transport just reached the jump point. All human civilians are safe, Captain. Then we proceed as planned. Helm, take us into the center of their formation. Nice and slow. Let them see us coming. The Eternal Silence began moving forward, accelerating gradually toward the 3 massive fleets. On every enemy ship, tactical officers watched in disbelief as the single human vessel headed straight for them, not taking evasive action or trying to flee. Warlord Thexel's amusement turned to annoyance. They're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Send a squadron to deal with them. 50 ships should be more than enough to handle one outdated human vessel. 50 Crithian warships broke formation and moved to intercept the Eternal Silence. Each one was a formidable combat vessel, equipped with plasma cannons that could melt through standard shields in seconds. Together, they represented enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Aboard the Eternal Silence, Ensign Li Deho watched the enemy squadron approach on his display. Captain, 50 Crithian ships on intercept course. They're arming weapons. Let them come, Han Doyun replied. He stood up from his command chair and walked to the main view screen, watching the approaching enemy ships with steady eyes. Open one more channel to all enemy forces. Let them hear this clearly. The channel opened, and Han Doyun's next words were calm but carried absolute certainty. You were given a chance to leave peacefully. You chose violence instead. What happens next is your responsibility, not ours. To all alien forces in this sector, understand this. Humanity does not start wars, but when forced to fight, we end them. Permanently. Warlord Thexel's voice came back, angry now. Enough talk. Destroy that ship. The 50 Crithian warships opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of plasma bolts streaked toward the Eternal Silence. Enough firepower to overwhelm any known defensive system. The space between the fleets lit up like a star being born. On the Crimson Dawn's bridge, every officer watched their displays, expecting to see the human ship torn apart in seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. The plasma bolts hit the Eternal Silence and simply disappeared. Not deflected or absorbed, but vanished as if they had never existed. The human ship's shields didn't even flicker. It continued moving forward completely undamaged. Thexel stared at his tactical display in confusion. What just happened? Where did our weapons go? The conference hall floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure of metal and glass that reflected the light of distant stars. Inside, representatives from dozens of species gathered around a circular table that seemed to stretch forever. The air was thick with tension, and the smell of different atmospheres mixing through environmental suits. Admiral Kang Jiwoo sat in her chair, her uniform crisp and clean, her face calm despite the chaos around her. She represented humanity at this gathering, though most of the other delegates barely acknowledged her presence. To them, humans were newcomers, weak creatures who had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. The other species had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Across the table, Warlord Thexel stood tall, his forearms crossed over his massive chest. His species, the Crithians, controlled the largest military fleet in the known galaxy. Hundreds of warships patrolled their territory, and they had never lost a major battle. His voice rumbled through the chamber like thunder when he spoke. The border colonies belong to the Crithian Armada by right of conquest. Any species that challenges this claim will face immediate military action. High Chancellor Vex Mora, leader of the Stellarium Empire, laughed at this statement. Her crystalline body reflected light in strange patterns as she moved. Your armada is nothing compared to our war fleet. We have claimed those systems for scientific research. They contain resources vital to our expansion. A third voice joined the argument. The Nexian representative, speaking through a translation device, declared that their battle group had already deployed forces to the region. The three powers had reached an impasse and none would back down. Admiral Kang Jiwoo raised her hand, asking for permission to speak. Several delegates turned to look at her with what could only be described as amusement. The moderator, clearly annoyed, gave her 30 seconds to present humanity's position. The colonies you're discussing are less than 10 light years from human space, Kang Jiwoo said calmly. Your military buildups threaten our civilian populations. We request that all three powers withdraw their fleets and negotiate through proper diplomatic channels. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in laughter. Warlord Thexel slammed one of his fists on the table, causing the entire structure to shake. The humans dare to make demands? Your entire fleet consists of perhaps 50 warships, most of them outdated patrol vessels. You have no voice here. High Chancellor Vex Mora nodded in agreement. Humanity should focus on survival, not politics. The galaxy is not kind to weak species. Perhaps you should evacuate your colonies before they become collateral damage. Kang Jiwoo's expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. She had expected this response. For 2 centuries, humanity had played the role of the minor power, the species that posed no threat to anyone. It was a carefully maintained illusion, one that had cost billions of credits and required incredible discipline from every human who traveled beyond their solar system. The truth was very different. Humanity's first contact with alien life had been devastating. A species called the Vexthar had attacked Earth's first colony ship, killing everyone aboard just to test their weapons. That incident had changed humanity forever. They had learned that the galaxy was not a friendly place, that appearing weak could be a death sentence. In response, humanity had built weapons, not in public shipyards where other species could observe, but in hidden facilities deep within their territory. They had poured every resource into developing technology that could protect them from any threat. But they had also learned another lesson. Showing strength too early would make them a target. So they hid their capabilities and waited. The summit continued for hours, but no progress was made. The 3 major powers refused to compromise, each convinced of their military superiority. Finally, the moderator called for a recess, hoping that private negotiations might succeed where public debate had failed. Kang Jiwoo returned to her quarters on the station and immediately activated her secure communication system. The holographic display showed Captain Han Doyen, commander of the warship Eternal Silence. He sat in his command chair, his face serious as he listened to her report. The summit has failed, she told him. War is coming to the Velros sector. Our colonies are directly in the path of 3 major fleets. Han Doyen nodded slowly. He was young for a captain, only 35 years old, but his eyes carried the weight of someone much older. He had trained his entire life for this moment, hoping it would never come. What are our orders? Evacuate all civilians from the border colonies. Humanitarian ships are already en route. As for the Eternal Silence, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Stand by for deployment orders. Fleet Command is making the final decision now. The communication ended and Han Doyen sat alone in his ready room, thinking about what was coming. The Eternal Silence was not like other human ships. It was one of 12 identical vessels, each one representing humanity's greatest achievement in weapons technology. They had been built in absolute secrecy over the past 50 years, using technologies that the rest of the galaxy didn't even know existed. Back on the station, the recess ended badly. Warlord Thexel had grown tired of talking. Without warning, his fleet opened fire on a nearby neutral station, destroying it in seconds. Thousands of innocent people died instantly, their only crime being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The conference hall erupted in chaos. Some delegates fled immediately, while others began making military threats. High Chancellor Vexmora declared that the Crithian attack was an act of war against all civilized species. The Nexian representative announced that their battle group would defend the sector by force. Within hours, 3 massive fleets began converging on the Velros sector. The Crithian armada numbered 300 warships, each one capable of destroying cities from orbit. The Stellarium war fleet brought 250 vessels, including their dreaded planet killers. The Nexian battle group deployed 300 ships equipped with weapons that could tear apart asteroids, 850 warships total, representing the 3 most powerful military forces in the galaxy. It was the largest concentration of firepower anyone had seen in decades. Small species began evacuating the entire region, knowing that when these fleets clashed, nothing nearby would survive. Admiral Kang Jiwoo watched the tactical displays with growing concern. Human colonies were sending out desperate distress signals as the fleets moved into position. Civilian ships were fleeing as fast as they could, but not everyone would make it out in time. She opened another secure channel to Fleet Command on Earth. "Request permission to deploy the Eternal Silence," she said formally. There was a long pause before the response came. "Permission granted. Make sure the galaxy remembers this day." Captain Han Doyen received his orders while his ship hung in dark space, hidden from all sensors. His crew had been preparing for this moment their entire careers. Lieutenant Park Mirai checked her tactical systems one final time. Chief Engineer Yoon. Heejin confirmed that all weapons were fully operational. Dr. Choi Minho reviewed the quantum calculations that would bring them to the battlefield. Young Ensign Lee Daeho sat at his communication station, his hands shaking slightly. This was his first real deployment, and he was about to witness something that would change galactic history forever. He looked at Captain Han Doyen, waiting for the order. Han Doyen stood up from his command chair and walked to the main view screen. He thought about all the species that had dismissed humanity as weak, all the threats and insults his people had endured while they prepared in secret. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans had become. "All stations report ready," Park Mirai announced. "Course laid in," said the navigation officer. "Weapons charged and standing by," Yoon Hyejin confirmed. Han Do-yoon took a deep breath and gave the order that would echo through history. "Take us to the Velros sector. Maximum quantum speed. It's time to end this before it begins." The Eternal Silence vanished from dark space, racing toward a battlefield where 800 alien warships waited, completely unaware that their entire understanding of power was about to be shattered in just 4 minutes.